Hi everybody. So sorry that you couldn't be with us today in class, but so glad that we have access to this great medium of YouTube to be able to communicate through. I hope you guys are doing well. Today what we're going to be talking about in class is God versus science, and are those two things really that different? I would encourage you to pull up the PowerPoint so that way you can follow along with the lecture as we go. First, let's talk about atheism and theism. Now, what is atheism? Well, it's simply a lack or a rejection of a belief, particularly a belief in God. What is theism? Theism is the acceptance of a belief in God. Someone might say that God is good, a theist that is. An atheist would respond not by agreeing or disagreeing with the fact that God is good, but would rather seek to point out that God cannot be because, in fact, not all things in the world are good. How can God be good, for example, when we know that there is suffering? An atheist might ask. Or maybe even a well-meaning theist simply trying to understand the problem of evil, which we will talk about later. Next, I'd like to bring up a quote from a book. Now, you can go and Google Richard Dawkins, so I won't give you all of his resume. But just briefly, he was a professor of biology at Oxford University. And he writes in his book, The God Delusion, it's not just about evolution versus creationism. The real war is between rationalism and superstition. Science is but one form of rationalism, while religion is the most common form of superstition. Now, what is superstition? Well, it's an excessively credulous belief in and reverence for supernatural beings. That's not to say that there's any reason that goes behind it, right? It's excessively credulous. It has too great of a readiness to believe in something. Think of some of the most famous superstitions that you may have heard of, right? You can't walk under a ladder. Well, why can you not walk under a ladder? There's no good reason other than it might not be safe to walk under a ladder. Why is a black cat walking in front of you that bad? Why is it so terrible to spill salt other than the fact that you, wasted salt? These are the questions that one might ask, and no real superstitious believer could give you a good answer. Does religion equal superstition? Well, both are beliefs in supernatural things or beings. Beings that are supernatural are simply things that are above nature. However, superstition is excessively credulous. What does that mean, and how does it relate to religion? Well, religion isn't excessively credulous. It has a belief system. It has things that inform why it believes what it believes, like a personal experience, a conviction, a reflection, and reasons for why that belief is held. Rationalism, on the other hand, is a belief that opinions and actions should be based on reason alone. Now, one might think that that's a good thing, but let's take a quick trip back through humanity and think about where our reasons have failed us. As human beings, we have reasoned that the DNA of African Americans is different than the DNA of white Americans. Why is that so crucial? Well, in the 20th century, it informed different people to think that one race was superior to another race. This is obviously not the case. These are obvious fallacies, and there is, in fact, no genetic differences between these two people, only a difference in the quantity of melanin in the skin. That being said, it didn't stop a lot of people from believing, from reasoning, from sciencing the wrong beliefs. Okay? Another example that I give is the Salem witch trials, which you can see that flawed logic in that excerpt, that little clip that we have from Monty Python. Now, I'd like to pose to you this question. What is a scale's job? Well, in the clip from Monty Python, you saw it falsely equating the weight of a duck to a person, a fully grown person, that is. Now, a scale is designed to measure weight, to compare weights, or to measure it in general. But you shouldn't use a scale necessarily to measure distance. You can say that my arm, for example, is 1.2 scales long or whatever, but it's not the job of the scale. Similarly, it's not the job of science to explain things that are supernatural. It's not the job of reason to explain things that are beyond reason. In the same way, it's not the job of theology to explain the detailed inner workings of quarks. That's the job of science. And science has specific tools to use for that. And reason has specific tools to use for itself. And theology has specific tools that it uses to encounter the truth that it seeks in God. What is this to say? It's to say that truth can be understood and appreciated in all of these different disciplines, ultimately pointing us towards God, but that each of these different disciplines have different tools that they use and a scope for questioning that they have. Think about it this way. Would you ever judge the quality of a football player by his ability to hit a home run during the sport of football? No, because hitting a home run is impossible within the sport of football. Now, would you judge a baseball player's ability to hit a home run in baseball? Possibly. That might help you determine whether that baseball player is actually worth his or her salt. But it shouldn't be used within the sport of football, right? You can't, again, tell a good football player from a bad football player by their ability to hit a home run within the sport of football, right? Because it's outside of the rules of that game. Similarly, good science can never ask the question of, well, is this God, or does God exist? They can ask questions about nature, about the things that one can experience or measure, but it can never ask those big picture questions that are reserved for, to one level, philosophy, and to a higher level, theology. Now that being said, and this covers the last few slides, can reason and science inform how we understand theology? Well, of course. Tomorrow and over the next couple of days, we'll be looking at how philosophy, using reason, can help us understand and develop some proofs for God. And science itself can help us to understand, well, what God did. Good religion doesn't ever reject science. It doesn't say, oh, well, God obviously created things and thus there cannot be an evolution. Rather, religion should properly say, well, science is telling us that there was evolution. Who am I? What is theology to say that God's plan couldn't also include evolution? The development of creatures throughout time, up until the present day, and through the present day. What is theology to say that there could be no Big Bang? That's not its job. Rather, theology's job is to say that there is a creation. And it's the job of scientists to explain how that creation came to be. Again, neither discipline ought try and answer the questions of another discipline. Rather, they should seek to incorporate other disciplines to a proper understanding of what is truth. What does it mean for something to be true? And what ultimately points us towards that absolute truth, who is God Himself. The subject of theology, but again, experienced in all disciplines, properly pursued. Thanks everybody for paying attention to today's lecture. Don't forget to do our reading from Stephen Hawking's book, The Grand Design, for your quiz tomorrow. Thanks, and y'all have a great day.